They say it takes a village to raise a child, because children need a lot of different people to look out for them. Families can use all the help they can get. After all, no parent is perfect. That's why McCoy leads the Early Intervention and Prevention Initiative. We want to showcase all of the excellent programs in our city that help families learn and grow together. Because when we learn and grow together, we make our village a better place to live. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy this episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities.
Hi, I'm Shana Martin, Director of the Early Intervention and Prevention Initiative at McCoy. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities. And today's topic is talking about refugees and immigrant populations in Indianapolis, some of the challenges they face. We're going to talk about some of the misconceptions and the myths, and then talk about one of our wonderful community resources, the Immigrant Welcome Center. So thank you both for being here. Terri Morris Downs is the Executive Director for Immigrant Welcome Center, and then Inder is one of the natural helpers. So thank you for being here, and look forward. This is a topic that's important and it impacts us all, and I'm looking forward to just learning as much as I can. So Terri, why don't you start and just talk a little bit about Immigrant Welcome Center and what you do, and then we'll kind of jump in more after that.
Well, thanks for inviting us to be with you today, Shana.
You're welcome.
The Immigrant Welcome Center is a nonprofit organization here that serves immigrants and refugees and getting them connected to the people, places, and opportunities in Indianapolis in order to build successful lives here. And so we do that through volunteers such as Inderpreet, who are first or second generation immigrants and go through extensive training to become part of our Natural Helpers program. Pardon me. And so part of the Natural Helpers program really helps to connect newly arrived immigrants and refugees with other people who speak their language, who have been through the process of integrating into a new community and are skilled at understanding how to help families build self-sufficiency, as well as to understand all of the community resources and methods of integration and acculturation that we use to help newcomers thrive here.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Inderpreet, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I came to the U.S., the United States of America, a couple of years ago. I started my journey in Boston, where I studied and then moved forward as a consulting role. So I consult in different states. There's been a little difference compared to state that I've been. When I came to Indiana, and I did get in touch with Terri, and we started doing this program and volunteering, I realized that me being an immigrant myself, it was so helpful to understand what is available in Indianapolis, in Indiana. So not just as immigrants or refugees, but what services are available, what is available to me being as an immigrant coming into the city. What can I do? What are my options? How do I look it up? How do I proceed with situations? So I think this is a fantastic way for a new immigrant or a person who's actually coming out of state to build in going forward. Okay, this is my options, and how do I choose from one of them?
Okay.
So I think it was a perfect stepping stone for me to get in touch with them.
Well, great. And now you help kind of give back by guiding people through the process.
Right.
Yes.
So various people from various community, whether it's the Sikh community or any other community, we guide them. Depending on their needs. So if they need like guidance, or they need resource help, or they need something translated, so we kind of help through that.
Okay. So let's talk first about the difference between being an immigrant and a refugee, because I imagine that a lot of people don't know what the difference is, or the different processes that get you either as an immigrant status or refugee status. So.
Right. Well, we define an immigrant as really anyone who comes to the United States from a different country. There's a different legal definition depending upon your plans to stay in the United States according to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Okay. But we consider anyone who's in Indianapolis from a different country an immigrant. Okay. A refugee is a different legal status in the United States, and it applies to those who are being persecuted in their homeland, either because of their political beliefs, their religious beliefs, their gender, their ethnicity, and they are being targeted by their government, and their lives are very much in danger. So they need to flee their home country, and usually will go to a neighboring country where they would declare themselves a refugee with the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees. And once they have been given that status by the UNHCR, then they go into refugee camps until they would be relocated into a third and final country. Okay. So the United States is one of the largest resettlers of refugees around the world. And locally, we usually have between 800 and 1,200 refugees arrive in in Indianapolis, each year.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. So that's very helpful
yes.
for me. So let's talk a little bit about the immigrant, and I'm just going to say immigrant population in Indianapolis. What countries do the largest majority, or just what countries do our immigrant population come from? Where are they living in our city? And tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. We have a very thriving and growing population of foreign-born in Indianapolis. Okay. Our total population of foreign-born residents of Marion County right now is at 8%. And in terms of absolute numbers, that's the largest it has ever been. So, of course, we're a city built by immigrants, but the immigrant population continues to grow in Indianapolis each year. So our largest countries of origin or source countries are Mexico, Burma, and because of the number of Burmese refugees that have been resettled here in the United States, and specifically in Indianapolis, India, China, and Philippines and Germany are also very large populations located here in Indianapolis.
Okay. And what country of origin are you from?
I'm from India.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what your experience has been like since you've come to Indianapolis.
I think people of Indianapolis are more open and welcoming and have had a broader vision and sense. So maybe it's through organizations like the Immigrant Welcome Center or other nonprofits that they have more awareness compared to other states that I've realized. So people in other states have asked me, you're from India, are you Hindu? Well, in India, you have 25 religions, including Sikhs and Muslims and Hindus and Jews and Parsis and Christians. So, it's often said, oh, you're a Sikh, so are you equal to a Muslim because you wear a turban and you have a beard? And that's not true. So I realized that in Indianapolis, there's more of an awareness compared to other states that I've been in.
Okay, but probably still a lot more education that needs to happen.
Definitely, but it's been a more welcoming city compared to the others where you're actually trying to make a mark and explain, and there has been difference. That's what I've noticed.
Okay.
I've noticed that too. We have a lot of people that we work with who are brand new to the city, and they always say Indianapolis is so much nicer. It's so much more welcoming than some of the other big cities in the United States where you're just another number, or people don't, make contact with you or make eye contact with you or are rude to you on the street because they don't know who you are. And they just always talk about the Hoosier hospitality that we're known for. Right. And it makes me feel so good to know that other Hoosiers are, rolling out the welcoming mat for immigrants and refugees here as well.
And I'm sure some of that is due to the great work the Immigrant Welcome Center is doing.
Well, I would like to think so. We did become an affiliate of Welcoming America back in 2013.
Okay.
And then earlier this year, we worked with Mayor Greg Ballard's office to become the 51st welcoming city in the United States. and received that designation through Welcoming America. And as part of being a welcoming city, we're currently working on plans to build a citywide immigrant integration plan. So we're bringing in lots of different sectors, such as the nonprofit and social services sector, but also academia, business, faith leaders, all coming together to really look at 6 various areas and focus areas of the way that we help to integrate newcomers into our communities, such as public safety, education, health and wellness, economic development. And we are looking, right now, our 6 task forces are looking at ways that we can better engage new Americans into the whole process and make sure that they're aware of the resources that are available in Indianapolis. And also coming up with some very specific recommendations for our new mayor, Joe Hogsett, to be able to have the city really champion and be an immigrant-friendly city, and make sure that there's language accessibility and things like public safety, and really starting to address some of the issues that all newcomers face when they get to Indianapolis.
So talk about that. Talk about some of the challenges that newcomer families and young people, since McCoy does a lot with making sure that young people have what they need in our community to thrive. So what are some of the challenges they're facing, and then what are some of the resources and supports that are available?
Well, across the United States, it's always the language and cultural barriers that new Americans face when they arrive in the United States. So learning English is a very long process, and many of us forget that and think, well, you've been here 2 years, how come you're not speaking English yet? When they come from a country where they didn't learn English. And it takes a number of years before anyone feels fluent in a second language or a third language. And so I like to remind people that they are learning English and trying to learn English. It's just a long, painstaking process because it is a very difficult language to learn. And what we find many times with families is that the children who are in school and hearing English so regularly and learning their studies in English pick it up much faster, and therefore are many times asked to be the translator for their families. And so we are trying to help parents find the resources they need to be able to learn English faster so that they don't necessarily have to depend on their children to be the translators and interpreters, especially for conversations that probably are not appropriate for children.
And then children are, I know I went to a meeting with school systems before, and they said that children are being pulled out of school because they have to help translate for their parents as well.
Yes,
so
that is another issue and I just feel like we have so many school districts in Indianapolis that are really, really doing phenomenal work with immigrant families and trying to help the parents learn English as well as to educate the children. So I applaud many of the school districts in Indianapolis that are really, really trying to work on that issue.
What are some of the other challenges, since you work directly with families that are here also?
Sure. So translation and language barriers. So I noticed that people get stuck at citizen exams, driving exams, or somebody's, the cop pulls them over and they have no idea what the cop's really telling them. So like Terri mentioned, we did go and do translations in different languages on the driving with Butler. So there are like these fantastic programs that the Immigration Welcome Center is really helping to go and directly meet the needs of the community. So this is just a few examples, but I've noticed that, the laws are not really clear because they're all in English, but being in English itself, it's not easy enough. And, the challenge is how do you break it down to a level where the citizen really understands? And especially if you're not in an English, vocabulary and you do not follow it, how do you really, give it to them?
Right. So to that end, the Immigrant Welcome Center has partnered with some College of Communications classes at Butler University, as well as IMPD, so that we produced a video on what to do if you are pulled over by a police officer, because that varies from culture to culture. And many times they are trying to show respect by getting out of their car and approaching a police officer. Well, in the United States, that's a big no-no. Yeah. When they thought they were just trying to show respect to the officer. So what we did was have a video produced with the help of IMPD, and then we had several of our natural helpers actually translate that into various languages, and we have those both on our YouTube channel as well as our website at immigrantwelcomecenter.org, so that immigrants can see that and understand it in their own language.
Okay.
And it's being explained by a police officer, Rafael Diaz of IMPD.
Okay.
And we are going to also work with Butler again in the spring semester to do one on fire safety tips, and we're going to work with Rita from IFD on that one. So I really applaud everyone in the Department of Public Safety for really understanding the language and cultural barriers that immigrants face when coming in contact with public safety officers, and really trying to reach out and really trying to say, you know, we want to work with you. We want to build bridges of understanding. So we need to meet you and do this kind of thing. And they've been wonderful to work with.
Okay, great, great. Now, are there places in the city in particular where there's large immigrant populations that are living together? Are there certain housing complexes, apartment buildings that you guys work with that are more amenable and open to allowing, or not allowing, but just open and culturally sensitive? Or are immigrants just living throughout the city everywhere?
Terry, I think they will be throughout, right? Wouldn't that be correct? Or
Yes.
there are pockets like
Yes.
Burmese live in one sector and the Sikhs
Yes.
live all together in one.
Okay.
But it's not necessary again. It's just ease and convenience that they're all one together, and there are people again scattered in Indianapolis as well. So it's a mix of both, I would
Yes,
guess.
I would say the exact same thing, Inder, that we have immigrants throughout Indianapolis, Marion County, but there are pockets that are much larger of certain populations. For instance, when you think of the near west side, you think of the Hispanic Latino population. When you think of Southport and Perry Township, you think of the Burmese. When you think of Franklin Township, you think of the Sikh community. So we do have those pockets of larger ones. Most refugees being resettled in Indianapolis, if they are from the Chin State, they are usually relocated or resettled on the south side of Indianapolis in Perry Township, but they are also being resettled. Refugees from the Middle East and Africa and many others are being settled on the west and northwest side of Indianapolis as well. So it's a growing population, and we're just happy to see that many of the receiving communities are really working to make sure that people have what they need, and that families find the communities to be very welcoming.
Okay. Is that, oh, never mind. So what can we do, the citizens, the United States citizens of Indianapolis, those of us who were born here in this city, those of us who were born in the country, what can we do to help make the city more welcoming, to help make you feel welcomed and all of that kind of stuff? And how can we get involved?
Great. Well, if we have the Natural Helpers Program, and most of our natural helpers are immigrants themselves and have been through the process of integrating into a new community or coming to the United States firsthand. Many are second-generation immigrants who may not have that exactly, but have very strong connections within immigrant or refugee communities.
Okay.
So that's one way. We're always looking for new volunteers to represent different immigrant or refugee populations in Indianapolis.
Okay.
We are also looking for a lot of community input on the immigrant integration plan that we are doing as part of our Welcoming Cities project. And we will be starting those task forces in January, and hopefully really digging into our work and having something to present to Mayor Hogsett by late spring, early summer. And so if someone has some interest in serving on one of those task forces, they should get in contact with us. But if really they just are interested in trying to be more welcoming in Indianapolis and not necessarily volunteering to do that, what I would say would be most helpful would be just to initiate contact with someone who is from another land and just introduce yourself and say, maybe invite them out to lunch and say, you know, I was just interested in hearing your story, or, you know, wanted to get to know you and find out how you arrived in the United States. So many times the people that I work with say, that means so much to me that someone wants to hear my story.
Okay.
Many immigrants or refugees feel invisible when they get here because no one knows them. No one knows who they are, what their story is, and if nobody bothers to ask, and you're in a place where you don't consider this home yet, it can feel very isolating. So just to say, I want to hear your story, let's be friends, I'd love to hear about that, or how do you celebrate particular holidays, or you know, what does your family like to do when you travel? Those kind of questions, you know, generally lead to you know, more of a friendship and really kind of fostering cultural understanding. And it means so much to newcomers that someone has taken the time to ask them about their own culture and their own heritage.
And I think, Terri, you're so right, because when you come to a new land, you have all these fears. Maybe cultural, maybe true, maybe your own made up fears. You know, for some reason you're going to be not sure whether you're going to be accepted as you are in another land.
Okay.
So I think when you come, whether it's, you know, a particular state or it's a country, it doesn't matter. You're just moving from one state to another. I think those fears still, you know, remain with you. Okay, I've been an immigrant in this state versus this. How will people treat me? Would they welcome me? Would they make me a part of that culture? Or would I feel left out? Or would I be able to call it home?
Okay.
Right. And I read once that an immigrant said they feel like it's finally home wherever they've landed in the United States when they have American friends. And they said that's when you actually feel accepted for who you are.
Okay.
So even if there are language barriers, you know, you can always speak to someone, you know, with a smile, with eye contact, and just let them know that, you know, hello, and being friendly that way goes a long way for someone who probably feels very isolated in Indianapolis.
What would you say are some of the biggest kind of misconceptions or myths about what people think about an immigrant or a refugee?
Either it's a status problem, or people would think, I'm not sure if they understand what I'm saying, or how do I relate to that person because he's culturally different. But what I've noticed is there are a lot of common grounds that we might have. You might celebrate Thanksgiving and we don't. But if you invite people over, they'll be more than happy to celebrate Thanksgiving as much as you would do. No, but the whole concept of Thanksgiving, they would understand that. So it's very amusing to me that, you know, when we say, oh, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, and, you know, somebody invites you over and you have no clue what to do, and you know, you see all their family together, you're like, oh, this is just like some other festival we celebrate back home. You know, so you do try and make connections that way, but I think when two people of different nationalities are together, they're not sure how to mingle or what to say to each other. I think it's okay to say that, you know, we're humans and we'll meet the common ground, you know. And I think that's just the thing that I've seen is, the minute you smile and say hello and invite somebody over and they might be hesitant, you're like, that's okay, you can take your time to see when you feel comfortable, my doors are open. That goes a long way.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I have found too, like, you know, one of the beauties, in my opinion, of the Immigrant Welcome Center is that we have so many diverse cultures represented in our staff and volunteer base. We have probably about 50, close to 50 different languages and about 40 different countries of origin.
Wow.
And they all have such an interest in saying, tell me about your background, or I want to get to know I've never met someone from that country before. Tell me what your life was like. Tell me what brought you to the United States. And they just really, really understand, you know, and begin to see the commonalities really instead of all the differences. Like Inder said, you know, we get asked, I think some of the common misperceptions is that, you know, all immigrants are undocumented, or are the vast majority are undocumented, and that is certainly not true. Or that, you know, a lot of cultural misunderstandings, as Inder said, or just religious misunderstandings when people don't understand a specific religion and think it must not be good because it's so much different than what I believe. So again, just I would say just involving oneself in getting to know people of different cultures and taking advantage of so many different events throughout the city that help to explain different cultures or different you know, religious beliefs or traditions in others is a wonderful way to really reach out and embrace diversity in Indianapolis.
Okay, great. And I know that you've got an events section on your website, so folks can always go there to find out what's happening or subscribe to your newsletter, which I get, and it's always very educational and enlightening about things that are going on in the community and around the city, where you can come and have the opportunity to meet people from different cultures and learn. You've got the Reuben Educational Series that has always been helpful too, and has wonderful topics that to me look like they help immigrants and refugees, but could be an also learning opportunity for others to get involved, or somebody may have a particular skill set to help provide some information or education to immigrants or refugees. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have a wonderful website at immigrantwelcomecenter.org, or you can call us at 317-808-2326, and we will be happy to help you. We also operate 3 branches in the evenings and weekends around Indianapolis, and you can check our website for those locations and hours. And those are staffed by natural helpers to be able to meet immigrants and refugees in their own neighborhoods and provide those connections that they need.
Well, great. Well, thank you guys both for being here. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the information that you've shared, and the education, the awareness. One of the common themes through this show, because we talk a lot about prevention and how to help kids and families, is communication. And again, it came up today. It's sometimes just it is just taking the time to talk to somebody, to say hello, and to open that door, and that just opens up a world, literally.
Absolutely. So and doing that with your children present, and encouraging your children to do that with his or her schoolmates, I think is also just a really important step to really embracing diversity in Indianapolis.
And I think it's going to bridge a lot of gaps and and it's going to build friendships.
Yes, you're right. You're right. And so it's a great place to end. So thank you very much. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us on.
You're so welcome. And thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities. And I look forward to seeing you again next month.